Okay. Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about my Temur Thing in the Ice deck that I used to come in 9th place in the PTQ Finals on MODO this past Saturday, which was week 1 of the Amoket standard format. And cat ban announcement happened on the Wednesday before this, Wednesday afternoon. So this was 2.5 days after the cat ban announcement that this tournament took place. So this is the deck that I piloted. I ended up here because I've played a lot of this archetype in the past. I especially liked Thing in the Ice in Kaladesh Standard before Aether Revolt came out. I played Thing in the Ice for a long time in that format, and I think it's a very powerful card. It got pushed out when Aether Revolt entered the format because Fatal Push was just so popular. But currently, the Mardu decks have not been main decking many Fatal Pushes. So I liked this deck for that first weekend. I imagine that blue-red control in some form will exist. I don't know if moving forward this is the best one, specifically because this deck hinges so much on Thing in the Ice. I would build it very differently if Thing in the Ice was not in the deck. But I'm going to share with you about this deck today. So we're blue-red with just a green splash for, in the main deck, just Traverse and Attune, and this is really important because this allows your lands, what are effectively lands, to function as spells that trigger Thing in the Ice and Dynavolt Tower. So we get to play 22 lands when usually control decks play 25, 26, sometimes even 27 lands. But we're effectively playing 27 lands. These are slightly better than lands. So we get the plus side of the control deck of having a lot of land drops, being able to play an effective end game with powerful 6-drops. And yeah, I guess this is a 6-drop as well. But we also have, these are better than lands in the early game, early to mid to late game when these cards matter. So that's why we're playing green. It is a knock on the mana base. This mana base is definitely worse than just a straight 2-color mana base, but I don't think it's that much worse because these fix your mana so well. These effectively come into play tapped. It's like a land that comes into play tapped. So we have a lot more tap lands, but if you attune ahead of time or traverse ahead of time, then the land doesn't come in untapped. So it's better than a tap land, but sometimes at worst it's a tap land. So for that reason, our mana base is a little bit sketchier than just blue-red, but I think it's worth it. I'm playing Evolving Wilds because we need 14 green sources to be able to cast Attune or Traverse on turn 1. So I think we currently have 14. This is 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, so we have 14 with Evolving Wilds counting as a green source. Evolving Wilds and Lumbering Falls don't cast Traverse or Attune on turn. Oh, this is not the list. I made this change recently. The list I played had 3 Attune to Aethers. My bad. But what I was saying about 14 lands, or 14 green sources, we need to be able to cast Attune or Traverse on turn 1 or on turn 2 a lot of the time. Ideally, we want to save it until after we have a Thing in the Ice or a Dynavolt Tower in play, if we can, especially if it's a Traverse, because holding it until the end game is sometimes the correct play. But we also want the option to cast it on turn 1 or on turn 2, because sometimes some of the best hands that this deck has are 1-land hands with an Attune or with multiple Attunes. So we need the 14 green sources. So that's why we're playing Evolving Wilds, and it also adds to the Delirium count. And we have Tireless Tracker on the board. So I think these are all very good reasons to be playing some number of Evolving Wilds. I have yet to not be able to search for a basic so far, although I have definitely come close. In a control mirror once where 2 different memories were cast. So we just shuffled all our cards back in, and I redrew all these attunes that were getting less and less basic lands. But for the most part, the 7 basic lands has been good enough. This is pretty much the same mana base, or a very, very similar mana base to the Saheeli deck that I was playing last season, so I'm very confident in this mana base. Moving on to the rest of the deck, Thing in the Ice, once again, is the namesake of the deck. I think it's the most important card. And that's because the nature of this format is just it has such a high power level that you have to be playing to the board. So we're playing Thing in the Ice, it's a cheap threat, especially without Fatal Push in the format. It usually, if they have a removal spell for it, which they do a lot of the time, you're not losing too much tempo when they use a removal spell on it, and it's just a huge cheap threat to have in play. And it helps you come back from behind a lot. Like, having Thing in the Ice, I think it makes our green-black matchup so much better because we have an out to them just like forcing threats through if we don't draw the right counter spells or whatever. If they just like resolve a Bristling Hydra or Ronus, we have an out in Thing in the Ice. So Thing in the Ice is just super powerful. It kills in 3 hits, right? That's 1 less hit than Torrential Gear Hulk, and it's cheaper. So yeah, Thing in the Ice, I'm very sold on it. The 4 Harness Lightning is a given. 2 Magma Spray. Magma Spray is better against Scrap Heap Scrounger. I've heard an argument for running Galvanic Bombardment in this format because it hits the 3 toughness creatures and sometimes the 4 toughness creatures, which is really important when it comes to Heart of Quran, which Dynavolt Tower doesn't kill. So I have heard that argument. I think it's a fine argument if you're playing 4 main deck slots, right? This deck, like, I don't want too many one mana cards that are going to be maybe one of your best cards in the matchup or maybe your absolute worst card in the matchup. I don't like the idea of having 4 of those in the main deck. It might become necessary if aggro ends up being super prominent in the metagame. Mardu is currently the #1 deck. So I could be convinced on getting 4 Galvanic Bombardment instead of Magma Spray. But that would require like trimming a commit, which I think I'm fine with, and then probably one of these cancel effects, because those are just not good in the fast matchups, which is what you want to be compensating for by playing 4 of those. I've been happy with Magma Spray, could be convinced on Galvanic Bombardment. 4 Harness Lightning is a given. It's basically Doomblade in our deck, especially with Attuned Aether and Dynavolt Tower and Glimmer. And 4 Disallow or Cancel effects, these are functionally the same card. Like if you just played Cancel in this slot, it would functionally be the same card like 80% of the time, maybe even 90% of the time. But these are just slightly better in niche scenarios. Disallow, I think, is better than Void Shatter right now, but there are reasons that you want Void Shatter, so that's why I'm playing the 3-in-1 split. I haven't been unhappy with it yet. Yeah, I could see, as I said, going down to 3 of these if the format speeds up. It is a very slow answer, but it's one of your best. Like, this becomes like the second best card in your deck after Torrential Gear Hulk after you stabilize, right? Like, if things are even or you're ahead, this is going to be great, right? So yeah, I like having 4 Disallow. 4 Torrential Gear Hulk, I think it's just the most powerful card in a vacuum in the deck, right? It's like more expensive than Thing in the Ice, but the deck wouldn't exist if Torrential Gear Hulk didn't exist, so it's probably the most powerful card in the deck. Thing in the Ice is my favorite card in the deck. Torrential Gear Hulk is the most powerful. Commit to Memory, this card is great. It might be wrong to play 3, that it is a high number for a 4-drop. Like, looking at this curve, I think it's a little awkward that we have less 3s than 4s. But this card is just so good. I like having catch-all answers, right? It answers Prized Amalgam, fine. It answers Scrap Heap Scrounger, fine. It answers a Gideon, fine, which is something that this deck could just not do before. Like, you had to have a Thing in the Ice in play, or a Dynavolt Tower already in play with a, like, yeah, beating turn 4 Gideon on the play was just next to impossible for this deck, if it resolved. But Commit to Memory gives you an out to a resolved Gideon or just big threats, right? It's overcosted, like 4 is a lot, but the flexibility I think is very much worth it, and the backside is relevant in enough matchups. In the control matchup, the backside is very relevant because the player that's behind in terms of card quality in their hand can find an opening to sneak in a Torrential Gear Hulk and flash back a memory, and then all of a sudden they're ahead on board with the Gear Hulk, and all the work that their opponent has put into sculpting their hand is immediately undone. Because this card exists, I don't think that Pull from Tomorrow is necessary for the control mirror, because Pull from Tomorrow, when you're ahead, it's great, it's fine, whatever, but when you're behind, like, I'd just rather have memory than Pull from Tomorrow. And Pull from Tomorrow, I think, is also just not a good card if you're stuck on less than 6 mana, right? If you're stuck on 4 mana, it's an awful card. If you're stuck on 5 mana, it's a medium card, right? This card is always very solid on 4, and then maybe just great in the late game. So I really like this card. So moving on to the sideboard, kept it pretty... Oh, Essence Scatter and Negate, and Censor. Censor is obviously great. I don't want too many because it is really low impact a lot of the time. Cycling it is good, but it's not great, right? Like, in the late game, drawing a Censor and cycling into, you know, whatever your next card is going to be worse a lot of the time than just drawing Negate or Essence Scatter. So I don't like playing 4 Censor for that reason, and so I have the extra slots on here. I'm leaning towards Essence Scatter in the main, so skewing it 2 and 1 in the main, because Essence Scatter is decent against Mardu in Game 1. It's not very good against Mardu, I think, in general, but it's decent against Mardu in Game 1 because they've been running 3 to 4 5-drops in the deck, right? They're main decking 3 to 4 slots for either Glorybringer or Archangel Avacyn. So Essence Scatter at Game 1 against Mardu is going to be okay. I think you side it out against Mardu because Negate is just much better. Like, all their threats that you care about, like Heart and Gideon, are hit by Negate. They side in Chandra or Nahiri too. You want to counter on Licensed Disintegration late in the game if it's on one of these, right? So Negate is just better against Mardu, but it's better post-board against them. Whereas against Green-Black, Negate is just really bad against Green-Black. It might catch a Nissa if they're playing Nissa, and otherwise you're looking to trade for either a Grasp of Darkness, a Fatal Push, or a Traverse, right? Or an Attune with Aether. Or a Blossoming Defense, right? All of those are tempo negative or tempo neutral at best. Or if they're playing Nissa, then you hit Nissa. So that's why I'm skewing towards Essence Scatter in the main deck. I only have 3 Negates on the board, and I could be convinced to... Or I only have 2 Negates on the board, bringing the total up to 3. I could be convinced to have a 4th one. But I for sure want 4 Essence Scatters, access to 4 Essence Scatters. The threats in Green-Black are just so huge. As I said, Ronus, Bristling Hydra, Virtuous Gear Hulk, right? Rishkar is even insane if they have a Constrictor in play. So I just want to have 4 Essence Scatters for the Green-Black matchup. So that's why there's 2 on the board. I could be convinced on more Negates. Magma Spray, very, very good against Mardu. I think it kills all of their 1, 2, and 3 drops in Mardu, except for 3-drop Gideon. Yeah, I think that's true. They played Pia on 3. So it deals with all the early stuff in Mardu, and you want to have access to 4 of an effect like this because it just gets better when you're on the draw. I will side in Magma Spray against Green-Black, even though it doesn't hit all of their 2-drops, just because being able to kill their 2-drop when you're on the draw gives you, like, it's one of the ways to break the tempo that they get. Right, it's one of the most effective ways to break serve when you're on the draw. So I want to have access to 4 of these. Sweltering Suns, I was unimpressed by it during the tournament. Sweltering Suns, I brought it in against Mardu and didn't really like it because they play vehicles and planeswalkers. I could see some board states where it's good against Mardu, where it's probably one of your only outs against Mardu, but I feel like we're just trying to avoid board states like that by trading 1-for-1. Like, if we're not trading 1-for-1, then that means that they're hitting us with, you know, 1 or 2 creatures, which is what we're trying to avoid to do. So I don't like Sweltering Suns against Mardu. I don't like it against Green-Black because they're so good at making their creatures bigger than it. Like, sometimes it'll kill all the stuff in play against Green-Black, but not often enough for me to really like siding it in there. If the humans deck becomes a thing, or if the zombie deck, like the fair zombie deck, not the Prize of Malcolm zombie deck, becomes decent, then I can see wanting to keep this, but this is my least favorite card in the sideboard right now. Glorybringer, on the other hand, is a great card in the sideboard right now. I brought it in against Green-Black, I brought it in against Mardu, and it was very good against both of those. Oh. It would have been very good against Mardu. I kind of punted my match against Mardu that you're going to get to see in a little bit. But Glorybringer, I definitely like it in both of those matchups, so I bring it in there. It's very bad against Control, though. I see people... Yeah, I'm not going to get into that. Don't bring this in against Control. Natural State, I think that having 1 mana removal spells is just one of the most effective ways. Same thing about Magma Spray. It's one of the most effective ways for you to break serve on the draw. It's so important against Mardu to be able to kill their heart. You know, if they go turn 1, Toolcraft Exemplar, heart, Natural State just breaks that up so good. And for that reason alone, I think you want 2 in the board. Like, Mardu is the #1 deck right now. Let me pull up the metagame here. Yeah, Mardu is the #1 deck right now. Tracker, very good in the Control Mirror. I'll bring Tracker in matchups where they might have push and they've seen Thing already. I don't like completely cutting Thing unless, like, I know that they're going to have a bunch of Fatal Pushes in their deck. But, like, Mardu and Green-Black, Thing is one of the best game plans that you have if they don't kill it. But if they do kill it, then it's pretty miserable. So, I don't like having none of it because it's so powerful, but, like, swapping it for Tracker, or this, or Tower. I was really unimpressed with Tower in this tournament. I did play against a lot of Control where it's underwhelming, and Green-Black, it kills some stuff, but they get out of range of Tower so quickly. And it's not even that great against Mardu because it's really bad on the draw against Mardu. Like, you play this on turn 3, and they're gonna be playing Gideon when they untap, right? And then you have a Dynavolt Tower that, like, if you have 5 energy the turn that you play this, like if you go turn 1 Attune, turn 2 Harness Lightning something, have 2 energy left over, play an Aether Hub, and then Dynavolt Tower, and you have another Aether Hub and a Glimmer of Genius to finish off the Gideon the next turn, then Dynavolt Tower is good on the draw against Mardu. But the majority of the time, like, if I'm on the draw against Mardu, I just take out Tower, or trim it at least. So very unimpressed with Tower. Tracker swaps in for Tower a lot of the time. I just like having the ability to change up threats, and Tracker is just such a huge threat. If they side out removal, like if they don't see Thing in game 1 and they side out removal, then Tracker comes in and can just dominate the game. So yeah, that is the deck tech. So the decks I played against that I'm going to be recording the replays of in a bit here. I played against Mardu in round 1 and lost. I played against 3 blue-red Control decks in a row. I think 2 were straight blue-red and the third one was Temur Control. And I won against all those. Then I played 2 black-green decks in a row and beat both of them. It was black-green energy, both of them were. Excuse me. And then the last deck I played against in my win-in in round for top 8 was the Temur Marvel deck that ended up winning the tournament. I just didn't really get to play Magic against them. There was still a decision that was probably wrong that I made in that matchup, which could have completely changed everything. But I'll talk about that later when I get to that video. So there's the deck tech. Hope this was informative. I know it got kind of long. Thanks for making it this far, and let me know if you have any questions or feedback. I'll be recording the matches, not today, but hopefully tomorrow. So thanks for watching, and hope this was helpful. Catch you later.